Our air and water is getting very much cleaner. For about 25 years, I had the joys of kayaking the great whitewater rivers of North America. I paddled the rivers in East Tennessee on the Cumberland Plateau. We all want our air to be clean and our water to be pure, don't we? And indeed, it's very much cleaner today than it was only a few decades ago. In the 1950s, my grandfather had a coal furnace in his basement. And every year in Chicago, after it snowed, within 4 days, there was a black film on top of all of the snow. And that was coal dust that came from everybody's coal furnace. And you young folks probably don't know what spring cleaning was for. In the spring, in the 1950s, people would literally wash all of the inside of their walls in their homes to take off the coal dust. But today, our air is very much cleaner. This is data from the Environmental Protection Agency. This lower brown curve shows that the volatile organic compounds that come out of tailpipes of vehicles are down 98% since 1970. The major pollutants, the EPA common pollutants, carbon monoxide, lead, nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide, ozone, and particulates are down a combined 80% since 1970. We see a similar thing in Europe. This is a graph of emissions of 3 different pollutants into Europe's air, which peaked in the 1970s and 1980s and have been declining since. Today, in all major wealthy nations, the air is getting cleaner and cleaner. And this can best be described by a theory called the environmental Kuznets curve, which plots environmental damage and pollution on the vertical axis and the wealth of a nation in the income per person on the horizontal axis. When countries are young and they don't have food and they don't have water and they don't have medical care, they really don't care what they put into their air and water. They just wanted more and more wealth. And so we see the environment decays as they get wealthier. We see more and more pollution. But then at some point, every nation reaches a turning point income. And the people look around and say, gee, our air and water is pretty lousy now, but we now have the resources to do something about it. And from then on, as the wealth of a nation increases, we see improving environment, declining pollution. And this happens in the course of every nation as it ages. A recent example is China. This is a look at particulate pollution in the air over China, which peaked about 2012, 2014, and is now declining. And if you look closely, you can see the characteristic inverted U of an environmental Kuznets curve. So the lesson here is that nations control pollution as part of their development. Today, the nations that use the most energy have the lowest levels of air and water pollution. And those developing nations are moving along that Kuznets curve. They're going to get over the hump, and their air and water are going to get cleaner as well. So the best way to produce a cleaner environment is to boost the income of nations, not to restrict energy use.